If you can do it right, you can toss it right monitor.
Matt, you want to pass me a lemon?
Welcome back to another episode of Chemists in the Kitchen. Today we're talking about wasted food. Really, this is a big problem that we have in the United States and globally, where we waste about 40% of our food that we produce. And along with the very important social issues this is related to, there are other environmental issues that are related to food waste as well. So we're going to talk about that today, but we're also, more importantly, going to talk about all the tasty foods and meals that you can make with foods that you might normally toss out. My name is Matt Hartings, and I'm an associate professor of chemistry at American University. And I am also a team member on an NSF-supported grant where there are about 100 of us trying to come up with new resolutions for food waste as well.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm a chemical engineer, and I do science and technology-based research and analysis.
Hi everyone, Sudeep Agarwala. I'm a yeast geneticist who specializes in synthetic biology.
Today I'm making two things. The first thing I'm making is potato peel chips. I always typically throw potato peels out. The peels, what do you do with? The other thing I'm making today is preserved lemons, which are great on lots of different things.
Say these bell peppers that I have, they're getting a little wrinkly and kind of squishy. So they're not moldy, they're not bad, they just don't look great. I'm gonna make sofrito, which is a dish where you cook them for a really long time. It's very delicious, it's good to go on all kinds of things. The other thing I'm gonna be making is with an ingredient that people often throw away because they don't maybe know you can eat it or it's not a common ingredient. I got this bunch of carrots at the farmer's market, and you can eat the greens on the top of the carrots. So I'm gonna be making a pesto that incorporates the greens rather than throwing them away.
So we're gonna make onion powder using the onion skins, which is super cool. And because everyone else is doing two things, I had some asparagus that is about to go off, and I am going to do a quick ferment with that. This is always my thought with fermentation. You know, when food's going bad, it's uncontrolled spoilage, and with fermentation, you actually get to add chemicals to control that spoilage. And that's why I love doing salt brines and watching the lactofermentation of these things. Shall we hop to it?
So I've got some russet potatoes here. I'm just gonna start peeling them.
Just peeling potatoes.
Ah! This is good tape. It's good tape.
That's right.
There I've got my potato peels. And so the rest of this is pretty easy. I'm just gonna put my potato peels in a bowl, and I'm gonna coat them with some oil and salt and a little black pepper, and then I'm gonna bake them. For a lot of my vegetable scraps, I'll save them in the freezer, just throw them in and make a stock out of them at some point. As the potato peels bake, we are dehydrating some of the starches and some of the proteins that hold everything come together. You lose that water, you get nice and crisp. So there may be some Maillard reaction going on there too to brown it a little bit. I'm not sure, we'll see what we get when they pop out of the oven. But here are my nice chips going on here.
Fantastic.
Looks great.
Yeah, so we'll let those cool down a little bit, but while they are doing that, I had some cheese left over in the fridge, some shredded cheese, so I'm just gonna toss some cheese on. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have used this cheese. Speaking of food waste, I got a little mold growing on there. Maybe I won't eat these today. We've got a little extra food waste here. I got some pieces that no cheese got on, so I'm gonna this one.
Okay,
Good.
so I'm gonna go ahead and get started on my sofrito. It's more of an ingredient than a dish. So the first time I made sofrito, I used it in a bean dish, but it can go into all kinds of things, mac and cheese, on rice, like it's just a really savory, delicious thing to add. But all the little cells in here are leaking water over time, right? Which is why they get a little floppy, a little wrinkly. So if you have salad greens that deflate, it's not really because they're going bad, they're just losing water, their cells are losing water. So it's good to keep in mind that if there's no mold or any other gross things on there, that it might be a little dehydrated, but probably still edible. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut up these bell peppers. I'm gonna compost the inner parts of the bell pepper. Just one way to avoid sending food waste to the landfill.
which is a big problem because food waste in the landfill makes lots of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas. But if you compost it, there's enough oxygen around that it doesn't turn into methane.
When I think about trying to use any vegetable that's like a little bit on the older side, you're just gonna remove even more water and concentrate the flavor. So I try to think of dishes that, you know, really benefit from that, just like removing as much water as possible. So it looks like my sofrito is pretty much done. I don't know if you can tell, but all the veggies are
Beautiful.
Yeah.
really toasted, and it's deflated a lot. It smells amazing. It's really concentrated. So those wrinkly old peppers got a delicious second life.
I'm dealing with onion skins, and I gave them a little wash, because who knows where onions have been. And you'd be surprised, there's a lot of moisture still left in the onion skins. Usually what I do is when I'm baking a loaf of bread or something, I'll just put them in a pan next to the loaf of bread so that it's cooking at the same time and dehydrating. I'm just putting them on low heat and trying to get a lot of that moisture out. I don't know if you can hear, but it's still sort of sizzling when it touches the pan. So I'm gonna wait for that to go away. And that's how you know it's dry enough when it doesn't make a sound when you move it around the pan. But very, very simple. Just pop it in the blender. I have my Beast blender, and here we go. I could probably even go finer on that, but this is onion powder, and use it just like you would onion powder. Oftentimes when onions are developing, that outer layer is actually onion, but it's just dried out when they're hung up to dry. The way you usually make onion powder is you chop up onion and you dehydrate it, but why not just use the dry onion that's naturally occurring on the outside of that onion? Yeah, very easy way to use up onion skins.
It's one of the first things I toss are the onion skins. It's always nice to have extra uses for things.
There you go. There you go.
I'm just gonna start cutting up my my lemons now. And this recipe that I use, right, or the way that you prep these is you take your lemon pieces and you toss them in a bunch of salt and sugar and put them in the fridge overnight, and they lose tons of liquid. And sometimes when you use just the rinds, you don't get as much. And so we'll just add some real lemon that we might have in the real lemon juice that we might have in the fridge. The preserved lemons are really savory, but I think a lot of people are surprised at how savory they are and how salty they are.
Sure.
But you can use them in so many things. My wife will make chicken piccata and use our preserved lemons for that instead of fresh lemons. You can use the lemon juice when you're making vinaigrettes, the juice that comes out of it. So there's lots of things that you can use your preserved lemons for. All right, so I've got about 8 lemons over here, and I am going to put some salt and some sugar on these, get that all mixed up here before I dump it onto my lemons. Just add away, and I'll stir it all up so that they're all nice and coated. So sugar, much like salt, will prevent microbial growth. There's certain kinds of microbial growth, but I want these to have a little bit of sweetness to them. I suppose Sudeep could add some sugar to his too, right? And you're just gonna have a slightly different flavor. The reason why I'm not adding any liquid to this is that these are gonna release enough liquid to aid in the pickling, fermentation, preservation part of it. So I don't have to add any water to these. They've got enough on their own.
While people are still cooking, I figured I might as well go ahead and do my ferment. So what I do is I have an empty mason jar, open that up. Some people are very, very precise about measuring out 3% salt. I am less precise. Put in maybe 2-3 tablespoons of salt in the bottom. It's going to be salt because the salt selects for the bugs that you want on the organism and kills off the bugs that you don't want. Chop these up into size that's going to fit into the jar. Shove them in there. So here are my shoved asparagus sticks. I'm going to just top them up with water, and they just sit. And if you're feeling fancy, you can weigh them down with something. That's always a thing. I shake them up to get the salt sort of evenly dispersed. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be slow decomposition in there, and there's bugs all over the surface of the asparagus. They're slowly going to start eating away at the asparagus, and in a day or two, they'll be giving off some bubbles, and they'll be really tender, and you can just throw them in a salad and eat them like that. Sorry, when I mean bugs, I don't mean actual animals or insects. Everything that you see, most everything that you see, is covered in a fine layer of microbes. Bacteria, fungi, yeasts. I mean, some of them can do do you harm. Some of them can do some amazing things for the food that you're cooking and do some amazing things for your gut. You want to select for the ones that are going to help you and help tenderize your food and make it taste yummy, and not select for the ones which are going to make it smell bad and make it taste bad and maybe make you sick. And the way you do that is, the really easy way to do that is basically just dunk them in a salt solution. The most important thing to just doing ferments at home is always trust your senses. So if it smells okay after you've fermented it, it's probably good to eat. If it smells really funky and really gross, don't feel ashamed to throw it out. You did your best. But in general, usually most things, you'd be surprised at how many things are okay to ferment, even if you've left them in the fridge for a little too long.
I'm gonna make my carrot top pesto. If you've made basil pesto before, it's the same process. So first I'm gonna cut these carrot tops and give them a really good wash, and then I'll get everything going in the food processor. And I think when you think about trying new ingredients in the kitchen, it's always good to just do a quick Google search and make sure it's edible, right? A lot of these things are edible, but there's always those exceptions, like if you have rhubarb stalks with leaves attached, you don't want to eat the leaves because those are really not good for you, even though the stems are fine. But a lot of root vegetables, beet greens, radish greens, all that stuff is fine to eat.
Basil is expensive, or it can be, right? And so we typically will throw kale into ours, but the vegetable greens are a great way to do it.
I've made pesto with radish greens, with arugula, so all those things have different flavors, but they taste good. For the pesto, it's got basically the same ingredients as a regular pesto. I'm gonna take all of these lovely carrot greens, which looks like a lot, but will process down into basically nothing. I'm gonna shove them in my food processor here. So I like the flavor of basil, so I'm also gonna add a bunch of basil to this. And then I've got a few garlic cloves. I have some pine nuts, although you can also use walnuts or some other kind of softer nut that will grind up nicely. Then I have some parm. For those of you who are really trying to minimize your waste, if you keep this rind, you can throw it into a soup. The waxy part won't fall apart, but it'll leach all of its delicious flavor into the soup. So I like to freeze the rinds and reuse those in a soup. I'm just gonna get this grinding, and as it's grinding, I'm gonna add some olive oil. All right, yeah.
Looks pretty good.
I'm gonna do some taste testing and fine tune the salt and cheese, but that is a pesto right there.
There it is.
It's good. I think I'm gonna add some more basil and some more cheese, but the carrot greens have like a really bright, exciting flavor, so it's nice.
Yay.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
When we think about how we use our food, if you're a banquet center, restaurant, things like that, and you have a lot of leftover food, there are organizations that do food rescue that will pick up prepared food and help to distribute it. And that's really the most important thing to do with our food before it goes bad, is to get it to the places where other people need it.
The sense of experimentation with stuff that you're usually throwing away anyhow. And it's not necessarily making a single thing stretch longer, but making something completely new with it. Onion skins for onion powder, potato skin chips, a pesto from the carrot tops. Not things that you necessarily would have thought to do with them, but it's an interesting new thing that you can derive off of things that you're paying for anyhow.
When we think about food waste, we can think about working with these kind of traditional ways of doing things where we maybe figured out before how to avoid throwing away food that we worked so hard to grow. And I personally am very excited to try more pickling things from Sudeep, your suggestions. And I love lemons, so I would love to try preserving lemons myself. So I'm excited to just keep playing around and I don't know, just trying little things here and there to cut out some of the food waste in my kitchen.
There's a lot of great flavor in the things that we get rid of, and lots of new tastes and things that we eat. And so if you are an experimental eater, if you're adventurous, there's lots to be found in things that we don't typically use. So give it a try.